welcome back everybody to another DeFi Raiders AMA. My name is Relentless. I'll be your host today. Today I'm talking to TN, the CEO of Pendle. Welcome. I'm really glad to have you guys back on here and super excited to talk to you. So again, I appreciate you joining.
Thanks for having us. Yeah, it's great to catch up again.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so let's go ahead and we'll kick it off kind of with an introduction, kind of your background, and if you want to give for those who are going to listen to this who are unfamiliar, kind of a little, a history of how you started Pendle.
Sure. So I am TN, and I am currently leading the Pendle team. So my background, it goes a couple of years back, and I started out in crypto professionally when I joined Kyber as one of the founding team members. So this was back in 2017. Stayed on there until 2019, learned a ton, met a lot of good people, and a lot of them opened doors for me. So lots of exciting opportunities in between. So after, I think during 2019, I've decided that I needed to take a break, and I mostly wanted to also expand my horizon and look out for opportunities in other sectors within the bigger crypto ecosystem. So after I left Kyber, I gathered a group of people who are now co-founders of Pendle to look into various opportunities. So one of the first projects that we did, this was way before we started Pendle. It was actually a mining software that focuses on using FPGA to mine certain privacy coins. Now, so we managed to execute the project, but it wasn't very successful because 2019 was a very difficult year for crypto. It was, if we consider now a bear market, I think 2019 was much worse than that. And so because of the bad year, the coins that we farmed, they were not very valuable, and we weren't able to sustain the operations. So we decided to move on from that venture and then focus more on building and providing consultancy services to a host of layer ones. But eventually, I think our opportunity came about when we were farming tokens during DeFi summer. And this was in 2020, second half of 2020. So if you remember, for those of you who were around then, there were a lot of shit coins named after foods like kimchi token. Sushi actually came out of there, and then there was yam, a bunch of others, right? And all these tokens, they were offering 10, 20,000% APYs, and we were farming all these tokens. But in doing so, it made us realize that there was no way we could lock in the rates, because as much as we like the rates, 10, 20% APY, 10, 20,000% APYs, there was, we knew that these attractive APYs were fleeting. So we just thought, and we made a comparison to the financial sector. And it just occurred to us that the financial sector, typically a big part of it is the fixed rate component. And at that point in time, it was largely absent in crypto. So we thought our thesis was that there would continue to be more money flowing into the crypto ecosystem. And because of that, the need for fixed rates and certainty is going to be more prominent over time. So, given that thesis and that context, we were very comfortable in this particular problem statement, and we started to ideate solutions to offer fixed rate products that is native to DeFi. So that was pretty much like the background of Pendle.
Yeah, awesome. I appreciate the kind of thorough background. I'm super excited to talk about a couple of those things. I've had a couple of conversations recently about the need for fixed rate yields to kind of drive mass adoption. So I'm looking forward to talking a little bit about that. So first, though, before we dive into everything V2 and and kind of your updates, do you want to kind of provide just as a little background, kind of the quick down and dirty of exactly what Pendle is?
Absolutely. So Pendle is a protocol that enables the tokenization and the trading of DeFi yields. So and what this means is that users who want to obtain fixed rates, they can do so on Pendle. And then for another group of users who are primarily traders and they want to speculate on yield, DeFi yield, whether to long or short the yield, they can do so on Pendle as well. So because of that, I think there are a lot of different strategies that we can consider here and a lot of different possibilities because of the nature of the product and also the composability of the tokens as a result of the yield tokenization.
Yeah, awesome. I wish that had been put to me that way, like the very first time I was learning about Pendle, right? As I was learning about like yield stripping and all these different things, I wish I had had a one-liner like that to kind of put into perspective. But great simplified kind of explanation. And it's interesting that you talk about strategies. I was kind of wondering this earlier, since you guys have been launched for a while and have seen great growth and great adoption, what are some of like the most successful strategies that you guys have seen used by users of Pendle?
So there are many types, but I'll just go through something very simple. And broadly speaking, I think the product is appealing to users who are looking for yield. So for one, the easiest way to participate in the protocol is to provide liquidity. So this is, I think, largely a relatively safe way to have some skin in the game and exposure in the Pendle pool. So currently, because of the way the AMM is designed, in which yields across the different protocols can be stacked up, the base APY on Pendle pools are generally higher. So as an example, STETH pool on Pendle offers 10%, right? If it's boosted with VE Pendle, it can go as high as 20, 25%. So I'll just elaborate a bit more about this, right? Because for most, specifically with Pendle AMM, again, using Stargate USDT as an example, if a user deposits Stargate USDT into the Pendle pool, the user is entitled to rewards from Pendle and Stargate. And then another example is the Aura LP tokens. So Aura RETH pool, if a user deposit assets into the Aura pool and provide liquidity to the Aura pool, then the user is entitled to Pendle rewards, Aura, and Balancer rewards. So collectively, this makes the APY of the pools much more attractive as compared to the other pools. So we've seen a good amount of liquidity in the protocol because of the way the AMM is designed. And this is, I think this has given us a good traction in the last couple of months. So this is like the very baseline strategy that the users of the community can consider. The second way is also very straightforward, and that is to obtain assets at a certain fixed rate. So this basically involves just the purchase of the principal token, because principal token, just again, like using it an example, I think the way to think about the principal token is like earn products on centralized exchanges. So for example, right, if you look at the centralized exchanges, typically they have a product called Earn. And what it requires users to do is basically to deposit asset into the pool, lock it up for, let's say, 60 days, 90 days. And then at the end of the duration, the depositor can withdraw the principal and the fixed yield. So in the same way, right, the buying of PT achieves the same kind of purpose as well. So basically, because of the way the PT is structured, a user can acquire PT today, hold it until maturity, let's say like 90 days later, and then withdraw the asset from the pool with guaranteed fixed rates. So I think these two are probably the simplest and the most straightforward ways that, like, users can participate in protocol for reasonably attractive APY. So going back to the second case, right, involving the fixed rate. So comparatively, I think if you look at the earn products, ETH pools on the exchange earn products like say Bybit Earn or KuCoin Earn, they're offering maybe 1.5%, 2.2% fixed yield. But on Pendle, the fixed yield for ETH can go as high as 7% for some of the pools. So the disparity is actually very big across the different platforms. And I think we have an advantage on Pendle because of the yield trading that takes place on the other side.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, yield trading is definitely, one of the more fascinating kind of subjects, right? And how that can be utilized, which I think was a great learning curve for me as I started to kind of dive into that and see what that was, basically how that was going to be attractive to, kind of bringing TradFi money and big money players into the market as opposed to just kind of crypto native. But awesome. Yeah, I really appreciate the great breakdown there. All right, so let's kind of transition a little bit and let's talk about some of the Pendle V2 upgrades. Right, what all have you guys implemented kind of recently that you want to talk about?
Yes, so Pendle V2, there are three primary upgrades that we've incorporated. So first and foremost, V2 has a whole new AMM that is much more capital efficient, and it also allows for the stacking of yield the way that I've just explained in the liquidity provision example earlier. So basically, what it means is that if a user deposits a yield-bearing asset into the Pendle pool, whatever reward that the underlying protocol pays out will be accounted for, and the user does not suffer from any kind of opportunity costs. So this means that if the user deposits Stargate USDT into Pendle pool, the user is entitled to Stargate rewards, right, STG tokens, and on top of that, Pendle rewards. In the same way, Aura is also another good example of that, Aura pools. So this is, I think, a very carefully thought out, and because of that, I think it's given us more traction and adoption of late. And then, of course, with the AMM, a single pool can support the trading of PT and YT. So back in the days, right, because of the way the tokenization of yield works, the outcome of a yield-bearing asset tokenization is basically a principal token and a yield token. Now, if a user wants to have an exposure on a PT exposure and a YT exposure, the user will have to interact with two separate pools to get two separate types of assets. But today with V2, everything gets consolidated into a single pool. So whether a user wants to have PT or YT exposure, the user would be trading against the same pool. So this is another very important design upgrade. And secondly, at the contract layer, we have at the contract layer we allow for assets to be listed permissionlessly on Pendle, because we believe in we believe this is one of the most important aspects that we can offer to users and community. Like in the future, what we want to achieve is to allow for any developers or protocol token issuers to be able to list their yield-bearing assets permissionlessly, the way they would do on Uniswap, and then establish yield markets for their yield-bearing assets. And of course, thirdly, we have simple UI and pro UIs to cater to a wider range of audience. Again, because back in V1, one of the most consistent feedback that we have gotten from our community is the fact that the product was very difficult to understand and it was difficult to navigate the app. So with a simple UI, we have abstracted a lot of the complex derivative knowledge. So a user with no idea how yield trading works can interact interact with the protocol without having to have too much of an understanding about how the fixed rate is obtained. And then on the other hand, for a pro trader with a very strong understanding and appreciation for derivatives, they can utilize the pro UI to obtain their yield exposure.
Yeah, very awesome. Yeah, so kind of a question for like the new AMM, right? And the, allowed for stacking of yields. I mean, how many, I guess the most simple way to ask this is how many levels could you stack that, if that makes sense? Like how many yields could you build on top of each other?
This is technically right. Like if you want to build yield on top of yield on top of yield, there is no restriction. But it probably wouldn't make a lot of sense after maybe 2 layers because now, unless the reward is 100% or so, it might not make a lot of sense to have that kind of exposure because every layer that is introduced, you are subject to some form of risk, right? For example, if it's a product that is building directly on top of Uniswap, then it's just 2 layers. So either one of these layers, right? If Uniswap screws up, or if the protocol on top of Uniswap screws up, yeah, the whatever asset that is supported on the new protocol is not going to it will be affected. So in the same way, if there's more layers in between, then the probability of some sort of errors happening is actually will probably increase exponentially. So I think unless the reward is very, very attractive, it's probably not worth the risk.
Okay, very cool, very cool. That's fair. It makes a lot of sense. All right, so then one more question, kind of on the AMM is what AMM, because you guys said it's a whole new one. What does it most closely resemble that users are familiar with?
It's a little difficult to find a comparison, but I think given okay, so it also depends on the different time period.
Okay.
At the beginning of every pool, it functions probably most similarly to a Uniswap AMM pool. But over time, the weight of the assets in the pool will start shifting because the Pendle pool actually is composed of a principal token and an underlying. And over time, the principal token will appreciate to the value of the underlying. And that's why the value changes naturally. So the AMM has to be accounting for these change. And yeah, so the weight changes a bit more dynamically. But this one is not accounted for in most other AMMs. So simply put, right, our pool takes into consideration time element, while most other AMM pools don't.
Okay, very cool. Yeah, I knew. I just, when you say you guys have like a new AMM, I wanted to, kind of get an understanding of like how it differs, right, from what we're used to, right?
Yeah.
So, very awesome, very awesome. All right, so then, okay, very cool. So let's talk a little bit about kind of the latest updates. I know Right Side out there in the audience blows my inbox up probably 3 times a week with the latest updates, and it's awesome to read, but impossible to keep track of because you guys are building so much. But you guys are, you're about to launch a new pool, correct? Are you able to talk about that yet?
I think it's still a little premature for us to talk about it, but I think Just to give an idea of how it's like. So one of the most important things that I think we need to do as a team is to continue to experiment with ideas. And if we look around the crypto ecosystem, there are so many different forms of LP tokens and yield-bearing assets, right? So far, we've only supported yield-bearing assets from money market, and we've also supported yield-bearing assets from vaults. But there exists other forms of LP tokens. For example, AMM LP token is something that we've not done before. And then yield-bearing assets coming from, let's say, liquid wrappers, liquid lockers. These are pretty interesting assets to work on. And then there's also another group of assets like the very, very degen asset, something like Olympus when it started out. Those are very interesting assets that we can support. But we have not had the chance to list these assets. So in terms of the market, I think like we want to be open-minded about all these different kind of assets and experiment how we can introduce these markets to the community in a good way. But we expect the first few iterations of every new launch to be, yeah, somewhat of a learning experience for us.
Yeah, makes complete sense. Okay. Yeah, so we talk about kind of like, experimentations and things like that. And you mentioned money markets, right? So what are the possibilities of, like, for example, using, the PT as collateral in a money market? Is that feasible?
Yeah, definitely feasible because PT is a fully collateralized asset, and PT also appreciates in value as time passes. And at maturity, PT is redeemable for the underlying one-to-one. So, because of the nature of PT, if PT is recognized as a collateral, it allows for yield trading to be leveraged. Because like trading PT is one of the ways, one of the strategies for that a trader can consider. So I think if a money market does support PT as a collateral, I think we can see pretty interesting use cases. And then the implications could be that the leverage can take place, and because of that, the earnings can also be amplified.
Yeah, very cool. It's just kind of a little cool thought experiment. So I'm excited to kind of see if that plays out in the future. What you're able to do there. So that'd be super cool.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Okay. So let's kind of continue here a little bit. Hot topic, right? As you guys have gained significant traction, definitely over the last 2 months, especially, right? The Pendle wars, right? So Equilibria, Magpie just launched PinPie. How do these wrappers, kind of really help drive the ecosystem development for Pendle?
Yeah, I think one of the best examples of protocols building on another one is basically the curve war. But having Equilibria and PanPy building on top of Pendle, I think it's going to be a very meaningful thing for the Pendle ecosystem. For one, because they are, in a way, unlocking the value that resides within VE Pendle. Again, because VE Pendle has multiple purposes, right? And one of the utilities of VE Pendle is for users to for liquidity providers to boost the APY. So sometimes like Pendle holders, they might have Pendle tokens, but they are not necessarily they're not the liquidity providers. So this means that the Pendle token is actually not generating any kind of rewards. So if they deposit these Pendle tokens into protocols like PenPy and Equilibria, they are able to generate some sort of return. And then on the other hand, for liquidity providers, certain liquidity providers are unwilling or not very keen to have the token exposure. Because if they were to purchase the Pendle token and lock it up for 2 years, it might be too much of an ask for these funds, especially if the funds are they are very they want to have they don't want to have a long-term risk of locking up their asset in a single pool. So having these protocols building on top of Pendle allows for the assets to be utilized much more efficiently. So for Pendle holders who want to earn additional yield on top of Pendles, but not providing liquidity, they can do so through they can deposit into Equilibria and PenPy, whichever they prefer. And then for liquidity providers that do not want token exposure but want the boosted yield, they can do so with either of these platforms. So effectively, I think it should help with the adoption of Pendle and help us with trading volume and TVL as well.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, it definitely adds an extra incentive to kind of invest in Pendle. And full disclosure, I put some of my Pendle, just so everyone's aware, I own a bunch of Pendle. I've been buying it since it was like 8 cents the first time I interviewed them. But I put some of mine in Equilibria, and it's kind of cool to see earning rewards off something that I was using in the organic way, right? But then also just kind of holding a bunch and being able to earn on that, and especially without the lockup period, right? With like the current Equilibria Boost campaign that they have going on, it's cool to kind of get yield for a short period of time and earn extra money on a project that I believe in. So definitely agree with everything that you said as to how it's going to kind of like help you guys grow. All right. So let's talk a little bit, kind of, I guess the best way to phrase this is, what other narratives that are popping off right now are you guys looking at for things that can be kind of integrated into Pendle, right? LSDs are hot right now and some other things like that. How can you guys either implement those, or how can some of those things be built on top of you as well?
So we've actually experimented with a number of different narratives, but the one that's still relevant today is the LSD one. So I think today when people talk about Pendle, it's mostly associated with the LSD narrative. And of course, I think LSD has a lot of potential. And I think it will continue to be one of the more talked about narratives for the rest of the year, simply because now that Chapella has happened, it has removed the risk of any kind of technical risk that were previously associated with the fort. Now that it's successful, I think the people are a lot more willing to deposit assets into like Lido and Rocket and have that ETH LSD exposure. So from our perspective, I think there are a few more narratives that could be quite interesting that we might want to have exposure in. One is to look at upcoming chains. So we are on a constant lookout for new chains to build on. So for now, I think the likes of Bera Chain, Mantle, these are relatively promising chains with the potential to gain a lot more adoption further down, and of course not forgetting the ZK ecosystems. And then the other one that I think might happen in the near term is actually the T-bills. So T-bills, there are, to my knowledge, there are a few larger and more prominent companies and protocols tokenizing T-bills and bringing them on chain, right? So like Ondo Flux and then Matrixport, OpenAiden, these are T-bill token issuers. So we are of the opinion that this real world asset this is probably one of the more important and pioneering use cases of real world asset tokenization. And we think that um, when, yeah, probably in like Q3, Q4, perhaps, we will probably see greater adoption of this form of assets. And when that happens, we'd like to be at the forefront and be ready to list these assets and enable the trading of the yield of these assets.
Very interesting. Yeah, yeah, that's pretty cool. I'll ponder on that a little bit. I'm excited to see what you guys are able to do with it, though. Um, I know you'll come up with something that'll be exciting. So, but definitely a lot of opportunities there for you guys. So, very, very cool to think about. All right. Okay, so let's kind of we'll transition here just a little bit. One of the questions that I had, I didn't ask it the first time. The first time we were talking, just kind of figuring out the protocol, and then as you guys have grown and you've seen some adoption, what do you guys think you need to do further to kind of drive mass adoption, right? So Pendle could be, like you said earlier, kind of complicated to learn at first. You guys have made like the UI, UX upgrades and all that stuff, but what do you have to do to not only drive adoption to native DeFi users, right? Who are used to those, like you said earlier, 2,000% yields and stuff like that, all the crazy degen yields that are no longer really feasible and aren't going to help the space go forward. And then also to gain kind of TradFi awareness as that money moves in.
So for one, I think we definitely need to improve on the UI UX. So we've made a great deal of improvement from V1, but I don't think it's sufficient because the barriers to use Pendle is still rather significant. So I think we have a responsibility to continue to work on the UI UX such that the users without any kind of derivative knowledge can use the protocol much more seamlessly than what we are able to offer right now. And of course, I think the other important thing that we need to do is to continue to stay on top of trends, because crypto is a very fast changing and ecosystem, and the moment we stop paying attention, we might be left out, and then it might be harder for us to pick up the momentum again. So I think it's important to just keep a lookout for what like the conversations and also the trends within crypto, and then be ready to make adjustments and increase our exposure through some of these events.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. We talk how fast crypto moves, right? And it's, like I was saying earlier, right? My life is super busy with like my regular job, right? Which is like a full-time career. And then this, and right now I have to travel a bunch right now. So I miss like 3 days and I come back and it feels like the world is like shifted, you know what I mean? So trying to play catch up with trends is a nightmare, as opposed to if you can stay on top of them and get ahead of them with your product, that's definitely huge. Yeah.
Sure.
All right. So let's see. Okay. So sorry, I somehow got closed out of my questions here. Oh, okay. Next thing I was going to talk about, kind of wanted to chat. You guys have, done a lot of interesting, collaborations and partnerships over time, especially you guys have grown. Are there anything that you've landed recently as far as like collaborations or partnerships that you're excited about?
Yes, I think so maybe not so new, but I now is a good time for us to deepen our relationship with some of our existing partners. So we've had a very cordial and good relationship with Aura Balancer, and we've done a great deal of market launches with Aura and Balancer. And then now we're also very good with Camelot. And there are so many interesting opportunities we can explore with Camelot because they have various types of pools, and then they have a big community on Arbitrum. And yeah, there's just so much more that we can do there. So I think now is a good period for us to just revisit the conversations that we've had with some of these protocols and then double down the narrative and offer each other the opportunity to leverage on our respective strengths to reach a new height.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Definitely important to foster those relationships. But then, kind of, aside from everything that you guys have done from Arbitrum, right, and strengthening relationships there, are there any, other chains that you're looking to move to, kind of, build your relationships there and build your brand there as well?
Yes, always on the lookout. So yeah, we really haven't decided on the next chain to build Pendle on, but among the ones that we are paying a close attention to are BNB and then Avalanche, Polygon, Mantle, Bera. So these are promising ecosystems. Some of them have already very established ecosystems that we can work directly with. So I think, yeah, probably in a couple of months, we'll have better clarity of the chain to expand to.
Yeah, awesome. Makes sense. All right. So then, kind of, I guess the last real question I kind of had was, what's on kind of the immediate horizon for your roadmap now that V2 is kind of like, pumping full bore?
Mm. Yeah, so not so much the product roadmap, but this is more on just what we need to do as a team. So now that the product is out, I think we've had early validation of the usefulness of the product. Now is a matter of expanding the use cases and get people to adopt the use cases. So now is a time for us to invest in marketing, growth, and business development, and reach out to as many prospective users as we can and convert them to users of Pendle. So whether it is to provide liquidity and become a liquidity provider and earn some healthy APYs or trade yields or get fixed rates on Pendle, this is going to be the focus for us, at least in the coming 2 to 3 quarters.
Yeah. So kind of a question that pops in my head, right, as you mentioned this. What kind of, narrative shift or mindset shift have you guys seen with what you're offering as opposed to what like native DeFi users are used to, right? Have you seen like a mass migration towards like, okay, I can get like a safe 7-8% whatever fixed rate as opposed to these degen rates? Or do you still feel like there's roadblocks there for, getting the native DeFi users to be attracted to these kind of safer long-term yields?
I think there's still roadblocks. And I think until we get these roadblocks resolved, we probably wouldn't see like a very, very significant and exponential growth in the metrics. So, for example, one of the one of the I think one of the barriers for adoption is actually the ability for users to very easily leverage or lever up their positions. Um, in the absence of a money market that supports for a principal token, right? I think it's very difficult for us to see more use cases to take place, which is why I think like just getting money markets to recognize PTS a collateral is going to be quite important because I mean not so much of a big cost, but if a user at the moment, right, if a user wants to trade in size, but the pool only has, let's say, $2 million of liquidity, it's going to inhibit ability of the trader to make an outsized gain, even if the trader is accurate in his or her assessment of the trade strategy. Yeah, because of the pool size limitation, right? And also just the inability to leverage. So I think, yeah, to your question, I think this is one of the more important things that we need to resolve in order to see greater adoption in our protocol.
Yeah, I agree. I think that those walls are slowly kind of chipping away, but maybe not fast enough. But I mean, hey, what are you going to do when 6 months ago people were getting 60,000% APY on stuff? It's going to take a while to get more mature users in who are attracted to these as well. So, but hey, if you build it, they will come, right? So only a matter of time.
Yep.
All right. Well, all right, Tian, I think that kind of wraps up kind of all the questions I had. I really just wanted to cover everything that you guys have done with V2 and updates, and thoughts on how things are kind of, shifting without diving too much back into the specifics of your tokenomics and things like that. But if anybody, I'll open this up since we still have a few more minutes. If anybody in the audience has any questions, wants to come up and ask, raise your hand. I'll get you up. If not, then I'll turn it over to you, TN, to kind of put out your last message, whatever you want to say to the audience.
Yeah, no, just good to be back and glad to catch up again. Thank you for having me. Yeah, and look forward to sharing more updates with you. Yeah, in the coming quarters and next few months.
Yeah, absolutely. I look forward to hearing them. I look forward to the next time we can chat.
Nice.
All right. Well, I don't see any questions. So, hey, I really appreciate your time. As always, I really appreciate, kind of the relationship that we built and being able to talk with you guys and learn from you guys, and appreciate the opportunity, every time to be able to have you on stage here. So thank you so much. And I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you. Thank you. You too.
All right, everyone. Thanks so much for tuning in. It's been another DeFi Raiders AMA. Once again, I'm Relentless. Really appreciate your time and support. If you're hearing this now on YouTube for the first time, please hit that like and subscribe button to help us expand our reach. Thanks again. We'll see you next time.